Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So in this video I'm going to be showing you probably the best arc build that you can use on Titan, still to this day. This is basically an updated version of a very popular Heart of Inmost Light lightning grenade build that everyone was using in Arc 3.0 last season, season 18. But you know, this is just kind of an updated version of it with a few season 19 twists. I haven't actually covered this build before, which is why I'm covering it now, because you know, Season 19, the content is very lacking. There's absolutely nothing to do. There was no new exotic armor, and there's no real decent subclass changes. So, you know, we're all using the same things, basically, as last season. So yeah, I'm probably just going to be covering a few old builds with new mods and different twists that people aren't using. Like, for example, people are using Elemental Wells in the Heart of Inmost Light builds, but we're not going to be using Elemental Wells in this build. So, yeah, let's get right into this. So, Heart of Inmost Light, one of the strongest Titan exotics in the game. Basically, what it does is that when you use your abilities, it'll buff the damage and the cooldown of the other abilities that you didn't use. So if I throw a grenade, my melee and my barricade are now stronger, and they will recharge faster. Then if I use a melee after the grenade, the barricade becomes even stronger and recharges even faster, and now the grenade charges faster and is stronger. So, you know, using a different ability will buff the other abilities, pretty much. Now, with Heart of Inmost Light, we are going to be on Striker because we want to use lightning grenades, or storm grenades. I don't know why I said lightning grenades, but storm grenades. And we're going to be using the Thruster, the Thunderclap, and the storm grenades here. The reason why we want to use these three is because they're all instant cast and they're all very fast cooldowns. So Thruster is 30 seconds base, Thunderclap is 1 minute 30, opposed to also 1 minute 30, but you have to charge it up, and 1 minute 30, but you have to be in the air, which isn't, these aren't that bad. Like, you can use these if you want, but the thing with Thunderclap is you can just click the button and it'll just do it, and you know, obviously that will activate Heart of Inmost Light and recharge your Thruster and your grenade faster. So that's why I recommend Thunderclap and Thruster. They're just instant, they'll activate Heart right away, and you can get into throwing grenades as fast as possible. But if you want to use a barricade or you want to use another melee, you certainly can. There is nothing wrong with that. Of course, we want to use storm grenades because they're completely busted on Titan. They did get nerfed a little bit in Season 19, but they're still incredible. So we are still going to be using these because they are the best things to use. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the abilities. So, aspects. First off, we have Touch of Thunder, which is basically going to turn our Storm Grenade from a regular Storm Grenade into a roaming Storm Grenade. Just with this alone, the Storm Grenade is already much better. And of course, with Heart of Inmost Light's bonus damage, it's also still very good. But with some of the fragments that we have here, we can actually make it a lot better. So, for example, we have Spark of Shock, which is going to make our arc grenades jolt targets. That's already insane. So the storm grenade will activate, it'll start chasing enemies, then when it tags them, it'll jolt them, which will chain lightning to other enemies and kill those, which is really strong. Then we have the arc grenades last longer, and this does work for storm grenades. So they're, I mean, it's pretty much just what it says. They last longer, which is really nice. And then we have Spark of Ions, which is when we defeat a jolted target, we get an Ionic Trace. And what an Ionic Trace does is it just gives you ability energy for all of your abilities. It's quite a nice chunk. I'm not sure exactly the number of the amount of ability energy it gives, but it's enough to get your abilities back very quickly. And it's guaranteed as well. It's not like a random chance thing. So, of course, you just chuck a grenade, it's going to jolt things, it's going to kill them, and it's going to make an Ionic Trace guaranteed every time you kill an enemy that's jolted. Which means you'll get your abilities back pretty damn quick. Now, just ending off the subclass, these things are kind of irrelevant. They don't really matter to the build too much. But we do have Knockout, which is when you critically wound an enemy or break their shield. It will basically turn your melee into an arc melee, just the regular one, the regular punch, not the actual charge. And when you get kills with the melee attacks, you get health regen and amp. So you get a little bit of movement speed, and you get health back for free, pretty much. So every Thunderclap kill will give you health, and on top of that, that's going to reduce the cooldown of your abilities and increase their damage. So you become pretty much unkillable with this, because, you know, your melee will do tons of damage thanks to Heart. and you're just going to get health back for free. So that's really nice. Really good in end game content as well, if, you know, you can get up close and you don't get instantly killed. So that's really nice. Our final fragment as well is basically while we're surrounded, we get DR. But really, honestly, you could use whatever you want here. I'm not going to lie, you can use whatever you want. But that's up to you. I just like having the DR because it makes me a little bit tankier, which is great. So now we have the subclass out of the way, let's get into the mods. So starting off, we have Charge Harvester, which is when you get a kill with any source in the game, and assists as well, you have a small chance of becoming charged with light times 1. It only caps at times 1, but we can increase this with stacks on stacks, which is going to make us times 2 every time we get times 1. So it gives you an extra stack for every stack that you gain. So in this case, you'll get times 1 from whatever it is that activated this, which will actually give you times 2. Which is incredible because we are going to be using firepower, which is basically when you throw a grenade, you get a little bit of grenade energy back. It only consumes 1 charge of light, so we basically get 2 of those before we have to actually recharge. The great thing is because Charge Harvester is activated on any kill, it really keeps the momentum going. You don't lose momentum with this build, which is what I really like over the Elemental Well versions of this build. Because even though the Elemental Well versions are really, really nice, because you get your abilities back very quickly, there's a lot of running to wells rather than running to enemies. You know, you don't really just go crazy. You have to pause for a second to get those wells, to get your abilities back. The good thing about Charge Harvester here is that everything charges you, including those grenades as well. And then using those grenades gets you grenades back, including your other abilities, thanks to Heart of Inmost Light and Ionic Traces as well. So there's really no flow breaker here. Also, I am using Osteo Striga in this build. You can use this as well if you want. Absolutely adore this gun. The great thing is that it poisons, and the poison will, you know, once you get a kill on an enemy, for the initial kill, it'll activate a little poison burst, and that will poison other enemies and kill them. The great thing is that that can activate Charge Harvester too. So while you're just going crazy throwing grenades, using your thruster, your melee, you can be shooting Osteo and killing things with poison, which is going to activate Charge Harvester, make you charged, and then you can use firepower. So there's, like I said, there's really no flow breaker. Everything just works. Everything will chain together. You'll always have abilities. There's no downtime. There's no running to wells and messing around trying to get those abilities back. They'll all just be there, which is really, really awesome. So yeah, we are using Charge Harvester, stacks on stacks to get 2 charges before we have to recharge, and then we're using triple firepower. I don't have a 3rd firepower in here at the moment, but I would recommend just using 3 firepowers. It basically means that with Heart of Inmost Light and Ionic Traces, there is no way that you don't have a grenade. You will always have a grenade, which is really nice. Now, if you want to top that off, you can use a double bomber as well. Honestly, you don't really need this. I wouldn't say. You can get your grenades back pretty much instantly without this. But it is a nice little bit of a top-up. You know, every time you pop your thruster, it is not only going to give you Heart of Inmost Light proc for the grenade, but it's also going to give you grenade energy straight up through that as well. And then, of course, using your grenade will activate firepower, which restarts the cycle. So that's the mods. It's very straightforward. Everything else in the build is completely up to you. Now, there are a couple other mods, however, that you can throw in this build, which actually come from the Season 19 artifact. This is where the whole Season 19 twist comes into play, and it really is powerful. So first off, we have Solo Operative, which is while you're solo or the last living member of your fire team, kind of like Alacrity, or Bottomless Grief, I think it was called, you will just get increased damage to everything against all combatants, so bosses, mages, miners, and this will work for all of your abilities, all of your weapons, everything, even relics. You know, anything that you are using while solo or the last player alive will be buffed with this mod on. It's only a 5 cost, it does go in your class item, but that's great because, as I mentioned, you can substitute the bombers for that. So, for example, if I took this out, which isn't really, you know, related to the build, and I took out the bombers, I could have firepower, solo operative, and still maintain stats and be completely fine. And what that means is that my storm grenades and all of my weapons and everything is just going to be buffed intrinsically while I'm solo, which is really awesome. For the second mod that I recommend in this build, that is Monochromatic Maestro, I'm not sure. But basically what this does is that when you deal damage with elemental abilities, so in this case Storm Grenade, it's going to buff the damage of the weapons that match your subclass. So we're Arc right now. I have on Forbearance, for example, which means that when I throw a Storm Grenade and I tag something with it, it's going to buff the Forbearance's damage. I'm not sure how by, because I don't have the mod and I haven't really seen any info on it. But I'm going to go on a limb and say maybe Font of Might level damage, so 25%. That sounds pretty balanced. It also does kind of have the same image, so I'm just going to assume it's Font of Might level damage. Let me know in the comments below if that's wrong though, and what the actual number is. Otherwise, if I find information on it, I'll probably put it in there myself. But yeah. Now, the other half of this mod is that when you deal damage with your elemental weapons that match your subclass, so in this case, the Forbearance, it'll actually buff your ability damage instead. So abilities will buff weapons that match your subclass, and weapons that match your subclass will buff abilities. So if you want to use something like Forbearance, or you want to use an Arc Primary, or anything Arc in this case, since we're on Striga, that will buff your Storm Grenades. So Heart of Inmost Light will buff your Storm Grenades. They'll now jolt and do more damage through that, and then they'll also do more damage through Monochromatic Maestro, which is honestly insane. If it is a 25% buff to weapons, I'm going to assume it's a 25% buff to abilities as well, which is pretty huge for Storm Grenades, so you know, that's great. If not, again, let me know, but let's just imagine it is in this case. So this is really insane. Now, obviously, you can pair this with something like Sail Spy Pitch Glass if you want to use a DPS heavy. You can use Storm Chaser, Thunderlord, Cloud Strike, you know, if you're not going to use Osteo. Really, anything Arc is going to really, you know, amplify the build, and make Storm Grenades do way more damage than usual, which is really nice. So, you know, make sure you have at least a little bit of Arc in there if you are going to use this. Otherwise, if you're not going to use it at all, or you're going to use Solo Operative, anything goes at that point. And I would recommend using Osteo in that case, because of Charge Harvester and the way, you know, that it just cycles into the build so perfectly. But that is the build. Very straightforward. Still very similar to the old version, but, you know, updated enough that it warrants another look into, since these Season 19 mods go pretty hard, I think. I would like to recover this build, or maybe cover a different build and actually get some use out of these in the video itself. But, you know, it's pretty awesome. So, let me know what you think of the build, let me know what you think of the new mods as well, and I might have a little bit of gameplay at the end here. I know this build is quite old, technically, so, you know, I don't really need to show it off, but I might show it off anyway, since not many people are familiar with the Charge Harvester and Stacks on Stacks firepower setup. So, yeah, otherwise, thanks for watching, and adios.